this lesson, we will learn how to calculate the density of a variety of materials. Density is a scientific term used to describe how much space an object or substance takes up in relation to the amount of matter in that object or substance. In other words, density is defined as its mass per unit volume. Hence, calculating the mass and the volume of an object can help us easily calculate its density. Before we begin, let's have a look on the materials we will need. We will need an electronic scale, a volumetric tube in the shape of a cylinder with some water inside, a ruler, a pipette, one stone, two metallic objects with different dimensions, two glass objects of different mass and volume, and we are ready. Let's start. As you can see, we have a metallic object that has the shape of a rectangular parallelepiped. To measure its mass, we will use exactly an electronic scale. We turn on the scale and check the units of measurement. The measurement unit for mass is the kilograms, and the subunit the grams, which are symbolized with the English letter G. We place our object on the scale and record its mass. So, this object weighs 30 grams. To calculate density, we also need to calculate the volume of the object. The volume of a rectangular parallelepiped can be defined as the product of length multiplied by width multiplied by height. This object is 5 cm long, 1.5 cm wide, and 1.5 cm in height. So, its volume is 11.25. What is the unit of measurement though? The ruler has a unit measurement, the centimeters. All of the previous measurements were made with a ruler. Therefore, the volume of the object we measured has a unit of measurement, cubic centimeters, and that is because all of the three dimensions we multiplied have as a unit of measurement the centimeters. So, having calculated the mass and the volume of the object, let's move on to calculate its density. The density is denoted by the letter D and is defined as the quotient of the mass of the material to the volume V it occupies. So, we need to divide the 30 grams by the volume of 11.25 cubic centimeters. The density of the object is therefore equal to 2.7. What is the unit of measurement of density? We measured the mass in grams and the volume in cubic centimeters. Therefore, density's unit of measurement is grams per cubic centimeter. Be careful though, if we had measured, for example, mass in kilograms and volume in liters, the unit of density would be kilograms per liter. Now, we are going to calculate the density of another body, which is also made of metal. Do you think its density will be greater, less than, or equal to the first object's density? We follow the same procedure as before to measure its mass and volume. Let's first measure its mass. As you can see, the object weighs 15 grams. To calculate the object's volume, we measure the width, length, and height of the object. It is 2.5 in length, 1.5 in width, and 1.5 in height. If you multiply these measurements, you will find out that the volume of this object is 5.625 cubic centimeters. Therefore, its density is the quotient of the mass of the material to the volume V it occupies. And the final result is 2.7 grams per cubic centimeter. Hence, the density of the first object is the same as the second one's. Now, let's compare an object made of glass with the first metallic object. As you can see, it has the same dimensions. So, do you think this also applies to its mass and density? Firstly, let's weigh it. It weighs 14 grams. Its volume is the same as the first object since they both have the same dimensions. Therefore, its volume is equal to 11.25 cubic centimeters and its density is equal to 1.2 grams per cubic centimeter. So, what do you think the relation between the density of the glass object we have just calculated will be to a smaller one? The smaller object's mass is 7 grams and its volume is 5.625 cubic centimeters. So, what is its density? As you correctly calculated, the two glass objects have the same density. If we want to measure the density of an object with an irregular shape, what procedure should we follow? Write down your ideas on how to calculate the volume of a stone. Firstly, we can easily measure its mass. Our stone's mass is 85 grams. Secondly, we need to measure its volume. So, since the stone has an irregular shape, we cannot calculate its volume through the procedure we followed before. Hence, we need to find another way to make our calculations. We need a volumetric tube, which, as you can see, is calibrated to be able to measure the volume. Do you think that we can measure the stone's volume just by placing it inside the tube? Not really, we need some other procedure. So, we place a certain amount of water in the container. For example, we added 250 ml of water. In order for our measurements to be accurate, we will place less water than the amount we need, and then with the help of a pipette, we will add the remaining water. In order to accurately see the indication of the value on the tube, we need to place a rice in a horizontal position to the water level. Then we carefully place the stone inside. As you can observe, the water level rose to 290 ml. Therefore, the volume of the stone is equal to the volume of the displaced liquid. So, we subtract from the final volume of the water and stone together the initial volume of the water. The initial volume of the water is 250 ml, and the final volume of the water along with the stone is 290 ml. Hence, the volume of the stone is equal to 290 ml minus 250 ml, and therefore 40 ml. However, because it is a solid object, it is better to denote that its volume is equal to 40 cubic centimeters. Therefore, having done the appropriate calculations, we conclude that the density of the stone is 2.1 grams per cubic centimeter. I hope this video was useful for you. You can now make your own measurements and calculations by following the appropriate procedure.